We had some wonderful discussions through the day, and we have reached to the concluding session of the Fast Track Digital. The last session for today is on content, technology, and business models, the future of digital services. We have eminent speakers for the session to be moderated by Mr. Prashanth Rao, who is a partner and leader M&E Consulting Deloitte. To take it forward, we hand it over to the moderator, Mr. Rao. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Muskan. I hear that the sessions from morning are going on very well. So we're here to discuss on how content, business model, and technology are shaping the future of streaming services. To take this discussion forward, I have here with me a panel of eminent speakers who are all great stalwarts in their individual areas. I will quickly introduce all of them to you, and then we can jump on to the topic of discussion. So we have Karthik here. Karthik Nagarajan is a Chief Content Officer at Wavemaker. He's set up social media based content this thing at GroupM. So that's what he does. So we have Vinit Mehta with us. Vinit is a director at Brightcove, and who is a founder member at Brightcove in India. And he's been instrumental in its success since the time it's come into India in 2017. So we have also along with us Saugata Mukherjee. Saugata heads the original content division at SonyLIV. Prior to this, he's also headed content division at multiple other media agencies, and he's a stalwart in the area of media and telecommunications. Actually, looking at the last speaker that we have, it's Kranti. Kranti is the COO at Shemaroo, and she basically heads the strategy division and also the revenue function at Shemaroo in addition to her role of COO. A warm welcome to all of you, and we can maybe jump on to the topic of discussion. And one of the major points at this particular area is like we're looking into it, there is no one at this point who would not have used digital streaming. It's no stranger to anyone, and COVID has enhanced the way the penetration of content streaming in a digital media. For this to happen very effectively, there are multiple components in the ecosystem. To talk about this and maybe understand more as to what are those ecosystems which makes in the perfect bread and for the growth of streaming in India, maybe we can go to Kranti to understand what are these various pieces of ecosystem.
Thanks, Prashanth. I still remember maybe a couple of years back, we were dreaming of 500 million video watchers in India, and we've gotten there, and maybe in another couple of years we'll be at 700 plus. What has enabled this really? I think 3 or 4 things. I would say first is the network rollouts. I've just come back from a vacation in Uttarakhand, and we had network deep into the mountains, almost everywhere we could stream video, which I would say even 4 years back, 3 years back was impossible. If you did not have a BSNL SIM, you could not communicate in that landscape. So I think our network operators have done a fab job of rolling high-speed 4G in remote areas in such a large geography of India. Of course, the handset penetration of smartphones especially has really also played along. It's increased dramatically year on year, and in spite of all the Chinese ban on goods, etc., it continues on a very healthy way. I would say the third thing, of course, is the entire content ecosystem. I would really give credit to the OTT players and all video platforms for encouraging a very active, content ecosystem, which is leading and drawing audiences for content to the phone, which is not available on television or other media. I would say these 3 would be really the key drivers. The fourth, I would say, which I think still needs some amount of work, which will help, further penetrate on the SVOD model, other payment ecosystems. While we have payment ecosystems, and again, there's been a good dramatic improvement over there, But recurring payments and ease of payment still remains a challenge. We all see end of the month, end of the cycle, large consumer base is dropping, and we struggle to even, and it's also a lot of involuntary churn where people want to stay, but they're getting dropped because their payment is not recurring. So I think once that piece also becomes as robust, a bigger because COVID has helped adoption in a very, very, very big way, which I think has hastened or fastened the speed of digital video adoption. What it has done is gotten a lot of people to sample it in a big way. They may go back to lesser consumption, but they will remain consumers. So I think that has been a blessing in disguise for the ecosystem. Overall, if you see ad revenue wise also, this is going to be a year where advertising on digital is going to exceed or at least come at par with television advertising this year. So even in terms of ad revenues flowing in, though of course all of it is not strictly in the video world, but a good amount does flow into the video. So these are a few pointers I feel where we see a strong growth for the industry.
Yeah, very, very true. As we continue to see the networks becoming better and better with broadband penetration increasing, with one of the government's thing being to take broadband ecosystem to rural India as well. That's really helped on this thing. And
I was in a very small village with 300 people. The whole village has a WhatsApp group. Every video that the homestay owner took was circulated immediately to the entire WhatsApp group, and the villagers are commenting. Like, I was flabbergasted, and this is like 1 week back. So
these type of stories are really nice to hear in terms of an experience per se. And then a couple of days back, I saw announcement of one of the major players where they're trying to give out the entire content to all of India for 2 days for free, just to beat that ecosystem of payment that you are referring to get to people to see how does it feel to use the services per se.
Definitely, I think it's going to be path breaking. Actually, let's see what it happens, but I think it's going to be path breaking because the affinity that player enjoys, in spite of reaching to a much smaller base, the affinity and brand recall, brand awareness that they already enjoy is massive. So I think it will be great return. I think again it will go in a great way to boost the entire industry. I would say, of course, that player gets a disproportionate benefit, but the entire ecosystem benefits when something like this happens.
True. So moving on to another topic in the same area, one of the very relevant point that Kranti mentioned as well is the content ecosystem, right? So obviously content is the king when it comes to media per se. So Saugata, maybe what I would want to hear from you is what are the various strategies that one would go through while curating a content for an organization to present to its customers. So how would the journey go through? What are the various elements that you think at the background before you come to a content strategy onto the organization? Maybe you can just throw some light on it.
Thank you so much. I think what has changed over the last 3-4 years is the uptake, and also in a way the building up of an ecosystem which was not there. So when I was in my previous company for a few years, when I was developing content for them, and this mode of distribution, I mean, what happened in the US was the mode of distribution changed, right? They were always making content like this, which was short, which was mini-series, seasonal shows, and so on and so forth. But the mode of distribution was network television, right? For us, it was a very, very different change. I think for us, the change was not just the mode of distribution, but also in the mode of making content. We've been making long form content in form of films for more than 100 years now. And we have been making very long form television content, right? We have not been making the kind of binge-worthy seasonal series that sort of calls for a different grammar of writing or telling, right? I think the first handicap that we had, and I think everybody faced that, was that where are those makers? We've got great filmmakers, we've got great television show makers, but do we have makers who get the format, right? And I think that was something that everybody was grappling with in the first initial year, a couple of years. I think over time, I think that in itself, an ecosystem has been built. I think there's a certain kind of, I mean, different makers have come out. I think there's been a sort of democratization of the voice, right? Otherwise, it sort of, you either had big ticket films and vying for that Friday release, and you had indie filmmakers who were trying very hard to get it into the, the festival circuit, and there was nothing in between. So now I think that has become much more democratic. Coming back to structuring or strategizing content for us, I think every brand sort of values its way of telling stories, and I think there is a certain way that every brand looks at what stories to tell. But when it comes to, say, Sony for that matter, we're very keen that we want to tell stories which are intrinsically Indian, right? And told in a way which is intrinsically Indian, right? I mean, even if I bring up the last show that we did, which has become pretty much of a cult show by now, right? We just launched a show called The Scam 1992, which is the Harshad Mehta story, right? Now, if you rewind a few years back or a few months back and say, oh, it's a show on the stock market about as dry as it could be, right? But that changed, right? And the fact was, it was intrinsically the story of an ambitious man taking the liberalization of India, the whole ambition and aspiration of a middle class. And it is told in a way which is deeply Indian. It is not trying to be Western in any which way, right? I felt that was very, very important. And we're trying to tell stories which are deeply Indian in ethos and even in the form, right, of telling. Of course, we are looking at culling out stories from literatures across our country. We are deeply privileged to have many languages and great stories from each corner. We are trying very hard to harness that and bring it to our audiences. And of course, we are trying to also experiment with the form a little bit in terms of the structures as well. So different measures are being taken, but like I said, it's a very, very nascent sort of industry. Everybody's learning. Everybody's sort of learning from what they did the last month, and it's sort of the changes are happening not every quarter. The changes happen almost every month now, right? So that's the fun, I think. But the biggest change is that the democratic nature of the business that we are in, the platforms there are. I think voices are getting heard. Different voices who didn't have a place to tell their stories are getting heard today. And thanks to technology, I think the biggest disruptor has been technology. Content aside, content, of course, is the king in a business like this. But technology is probably the one big disruptor which has brought the content into the little homes in that 300 people village in Garhwal or somewhere else, right? So yes, that's pretty much how we look at it.
So Saugata very nicely put it across, saying that content is the king, but technology is the kingmaker. And obviously there are multiple factors: that the form, the storytelling, the nativeness of the story itself are something that gets picked in here. Karthik, would you want to add in some more factors here? What you would look into while formulating a strategy on a content side, to add on to what Saugata added in?
I think I'm going to set aside brands for the moment. I think Saugata made a very powerful point on the Indianness of the content being created right now. Right? Like Scam 1992 is such a watershed moment that this is not a Breaking Bad of India. This is not something else of India. This is Scam 1992 of India. And that is what we've been waiting for, which is for a country which is grown up for centuries, thousands of years on extraordinary stories which are very, very indigenous to us. We should be able to tell our own stories, not just our version of someone else's story. I think that is what has happened now. And again, like Saugata mentioned, a lot is now happening in the works, which leans in on literature, which leans in on mythology, etc. Right? I think if you are a fan of watching great content, I think you should really look forward to the next 4 or 5 years. I think from a brand perspective, there is a role, and that role exists both in an AVOD as well as in an SVOD space. I think today it is important for brands to create their own cultures and subcultures. Right? I think the previous 10 years were about brands riding the wave on a trend. And now it is more about them, creating, their own cultures and subcultures. Right? So, for example, when it comes to OTT, we work very closely with a client called Pernod Ricard, which owns a lot of single malt brands like Glenlivet and Chivas and everything. Right? So, when we wanted to sort of create a culture of, when we want to create content that appeals to the discerning customer, right? Someone who enjoys travel, someone who enjoys a single malt, someone who enjoys the stories behind these malts. Right? So we created a show called Spirit of Scotland, which really gives you a sense of the Scottish experience, but the malt story weaved into it in a very well integrated manner. Right? So it's not whether it's branded content, whether it's audience-related content. That is, you can argue that case either way. So that's the direction that brands are heading. Right? How can they be a part narrator of these cultural stories? So it's very exciting times for them as well.
So do you see these being a part of the overall content variety available in a platform, or do you see these breaking away and forming a specific league in itself? Say, for example, someone who's interested in wildlife related content, there would be a place where he can go there and it's specifically for him. Kids education or adventure and tourism, like you mentioned. Would they form on breakaway into a specific niche category, catering to a specific type of customer, or would this be a part of the overall construct that one would present to cater to the varying customers that would be catered to by the platform? How do you see this going in?
It's not a zero-sum game, right? I think it's a bit of both. For example, I could integrate a beverage brand, forget alcohol. I could integrate a tea brand as easily into a scam 1992 as I can by talking about tea and travel, etc. Right? I think they both will coexist. What at this point it's pretty nascent, for us to analyze user behavior. Right? I think we're just getting introduced to this phenomenon of scaled OTT consumption. So as we go down this path in a few years, we'll have some very clear audience behavior in terms of how are they consuming, how are they switching, what devices are they watching in, and all of those, right? But I think safe to say that there will never be any one approach. It will probably be multiple ways in which you stay relevant in the content consumption ecosystem as a brand.
Prashanth, sorry, I'll jump in here. I think it will depend on the objective. So similar to when you choose a TV channel where you want to advertise, do you want breadth or do you want depth? So you want breadth, you go to a mass player, existing player, and try to be part of that offering. And if you want a smaller base of highly engaged consumers and where you have a very focused interest in developing that market, I think, because a niche will always have the challenge of customer acquisition, but the consumers they get will be highly loyal and engaged. So I think it will depend on the objective of the brand, and it will vary from time to time for the same brand also, I would say.
Absolutely.
Yeah, correct. So moving on to another aspect, everyone has spoken about how technology is playing a role in this particular aspect. So maybe I'll go to Vinit to understand a little bit of what is going on behind the scenes. Some of the things that technology is presenting, we can see in the face of us in terms of app. We can see that, okay, Prashanth, you watch this, why don't you watch this? A recommendation will come through. My user experience is made better, etc. But then I'm sure there is hundreds of things which are happening behind the scenes for this to work and the magic to happen. Can you throw some lights on some things that's happening, some things which we can expect to see in the future?
Sure. Thank you, Prashanth. Great to be part of this panel. I think over the last few years, as technology has evolved, it has become easier to launch your own OTT platform, right? Or your own digital property. I think video streaming has become so mainstream today. And, thanks to COVID, it's intensified, the pace has intensified where people expect, viewing video to be as simple as turning the page of a book. In fact, that was one of the premises on which Brightcove was founded in the year 2004. So we've been doing this 1 year before YouTube as well. And since then, people look up to Brightcove as the torchbearer of any innovation in the video tech space. But if you look at OTT today, it's so much more than video tech. There's your content recommendation, there's your personalization, discovery of content, and how technology today makes that discovery or that content recommendation so simple. I think the game is, and the area we have covered so far over the last few years is that we have made the technology simple, we've made it fast, we've made it scalable, which is very important from an India context, and we've made it reliable. The last thing you want is to see a buffering or a spinning wheel. So the focus is to make sure that the video player technology is fast. People's patience is very limited today, as you can imagine. We've seen in our customers in India over the last 3-4 years that even a 1 or 2 second delay in the video player load time leads to an increase in bounce rate, right? So I think the focus is to do these simple things right and do it fast. So, for example, we get a lot of OTT wannabes who reach out to us to launch OTT platforms. And they are like, we want this feature and that feature, and I'm trying to build a big Rolls Royce. But the idea is to go to market fast. So I think what vendors like Brightcove and technology companies like us enable the ecosystem to do is go to market quickly. If your content is ready, you go to market quickly because the focus is on the content. Technology is an enabler, right? To make it simple and to make it scalable and reliable. I think in terms of innovation, internally we have this thought that basically 6 months in OTT is like 2 or 3 years in any other industry. That's how fast the world is changing, right? You have new DRMs, new operating systems, new applications, new devices, and how do you reach the viewer where they want to watch your content, right? So Brightcove and people like us are laser focused on making sure that your video launches fast, no matter what device you access it from. There's a lot of innovation happening using machine learning and AI. The focus that the ecosystem and the technology providers have today is to make sure that the experience and economics of video delivery is optimized. It's very good to say that, I have this shiny tool of technology and this is going to do this for me and that for me. But from an India context, the focus is on dhanda, right? You're going to make sure that you're either using technology to reduce cost, increase revenue, or transform the user experience. If your technology cannot do one of these at least, then there's no point doing business out here, right? Because it's a very cost-conscious market. And since the OTT players, their revenues are stacking up gradually, they are also very conscious of spending money, right? So we actually have interesting, you spoke about innovation in the tech space and what's going on. We have technologies in the space called context-aware encoding, which uses AI and machine learning to optimize the bitrate ladder depending on the motion in the video, thereby saving around 30 to 50% cost of your bandwidth and storage. So, when you break down the video tech, your bandwidth cost is the biggest cost that you will incur in terms of an OpEx, right? And as consumption over the last 7 or 8 months has skyrocketed, so has the bandwidth cost. So, we are trying to make sure that in the video delivery ecosystem, the bandwidth costs can be minimized using smart and AI technologies. That's one. Second is we continuously focus on R&D to make sure that the video player is very light, it loads fast. There's a lot of R&D dollars being spent by Brightcove in the US and around the world to make sure that the video player gets lighter and lighter. It might sound as a very simple thing, but there's a lot of heavy lifting going on to make sure that the video player, because that's the only part of our tech that your user will see, or the content
Right.
owner's user will see, is the video player. He clicks on play, it should play fast. The rest of the focus is on the content. So these are some of the things that that are going on in the market.
That's very useful to understand. When if you have to break up the overall thing and say these are 4 or 5 elements, say for example, one may be a content management system is a basic requirement. The other may be an ad serving platform as a requirement. Like this, are there some 4 or 5 bricks of a component? If there is a content producer who's got a bunch of content with him and he wants to quickly go to the market and launch, what are those bricks that he should ensure are there in his inventory before he makes the plunge?
Yeah, I think so. Good point. And I think it's a good time to also mention that we see this in the market that the right team has to be there, right? So, people come to us saying that, I have all this great content, I have the audience, but do you have the right team who can help you execute, right? The technology vendors like Brightcove have plug and play solutions, which will enable them to go to market quickly with the applications, with the front end applications across different devices to get you the breadth, with the video platform at the back end to make sure your streaming is fast, and with the subscription management system to manage your subscribers, right? And to collect the payments. Broadly, these are 3 or 4 buckets that are there in terms of the OTT business. You add on top of that, as you gain maturity, you add your recommendation engine, your ad server, your marketing automation platform, and so on and so forth. I think the other thing that's worth talking about in terms of the technology stack is also the understanding of the user, right? So we tell our broadcasters and channels who reach out to us that basically you have thought as a B2B company before, and now you have to think like a B2C company, right? So your technology stack has to be relevant to that particular endeavor or intent.
Hmm.
Because I need to know who Prashanth is. I need to know who Saugata is, who Kranti is, right? To make sure that I can personalize and deliver the content at the right time and in the right way. So these are some of the building blocks of tech. But broadly, it starts with the OVP or the online video platform like Brightcove. It also extends to the application or the front end, the subscription management system, and then your monetization layer, which is your ad tech.
Right. Thank you. Thanks for that. So here we have a question for Karthik from Gayatri. So Gayatri is asking, do you see brand integration in web series like how we see branding is used in films traditionally? So you want to take that, Karthik?
Sure. I think it's not like we've been the best market for brand integrations in films itself to begin with. I think our partnerships have been more as a co-promoting sort of a partnership rather than a film integration, right? Like for example, what happens outside India, like an Omega and a James Bond, or things like that. But I think the propensity to do this in web series, especially in platforms, in large platforms, I think that's much higher. There are a few things which have already happened over the last few years, and I see a lot of action happening in this space. So it's absolute unequivocal yes to the question.
Yeah, thanks for that. So one more thing that we come across very often, the moment we speak about monetization strategy is SVOD will not work in India. That's a predominant thing that we hear multiple times. So I want to hear from this audience as to what do you think of this particular aspect. Does SVOD stand a chance in the India ecosystem? What is it to be done to make that happen? Anyone who want to take this?
Well, I can go first, considering that it's a strange time that we are living in, right? I mean, we launched the SonyLIV 2.0 in June, right? End of June. And of course, we were planning for it when the pandemic was not there, right? God sort of threw in a pandemic in between. Little did we sort of plan for it, but what I've seen is that it has, even if I sound rather strange, it has done wonders for the business. I mean, I think what has happened is what we were trying to achieve, probably what would have taken maybe years, has happened in months, right? The SVOD business has grown phenomenally. Even if I can speak for myself, I'm assuming some of my, friends in other, networks would probably align with me, has had a massive, massive uptake. Uh, the biggest thing is what has happened is the change in habit. I think habit formation has, it's not like a break of 2 weeks or 4 weeks. It's been 8 months, and now I think people have gotten into this OTT. They've sort of really taken it up as their form of entertainment. The medium of entertainment now, and they're happy to pay for it. Look, if I can speak for ourselves, we actually doubled the subscription rates, and in June from where we were, and we have added close to a few million subscribers over the last couple of months, which is a massive, massive number today. What we thought even say 8 months back that the SVOD business was possibly not viable in this country, it looks more and more viable. It looks more and more viable if you get your content right. If your content is right, it will work. If your content falters, it will not work. The trick is that you've got to get it more right than wrong. Which is, unfortunately, I wish someone like Vinit could get an algorithm for content. Thankfully, we still don't have it, and people like us have jobs. But the good thing is that it's a change in the way you're looking at business today in the SVOD market. It was very different a year back. It's very different today. But India is unique. We are not only a SVOD or an AVOD market. We are the only freemium market here. And of course, we have pure play SVOD players here as well. But if you're looking at the other 2 or 3 bigger players, they're playing into the freemium market. So I feel that a mix of both is a bit of a win-win sort of strategy for India, at least. But yes, if long story short, does it have a future? I think it has a great future now.
You wanted to say something, Kranti, on it?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think both will coexist. Because India as a market, actually, I always give this example. If you pick up India, the top 2 or 3% are as affluent as any European country or Australia, or then you have this 17% or 16%, which are probably like Malaysia, but still well-to-do, but still very value conscious. And then we have 80%, which is probably like Africa, who do not simply have either the propensity or the willingness or the ability to pay. So you would, as if to capture a mass market, and Shemaroo being a mass player, we have a freemium strategy, is you have to coexist in both the places. And there will be, I think from Saugata's point of view also, there will be content which works only for SVOD, and then there is content which works only for AVOD. For AVOD, to get how much one consumer will pay you in 1 month, you probably need 1 lakh views on AVOD. So, and those 1 lakh people are not going to pay 100 rupees. So, you have to be able to look at your content and segregate what goes behind the paywall, what stays outside, and milk both. And you use AVOD to bring in the masses and give them and upgrade them to SVOD over a period of time. But I agree again with Saugata that SVOD does have a good future. The payment ecosystem does need to evolve a little bit more and support the entire SVOD ecosystem. But I think even Disney, in this result has declared that they roughly have 78 million users in India. And we keep hearing various other estimates of other players. So definitely, I would say probably in a 3 to 5 year period, we would probably 10% of the market could end up being SVOD. But in SVOD, the lucky thing is that you don't need 100% of the market. With the 10%, the profitability will be way more than in AVOD, because the cost to serve that
Absolutely.
consumer is much lesser than serving, 100,000 AVOD
Exactly.
customers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the point which comes in here is one of our boon and pain is our population. So with the amount of population that we have, even a 1 rupee contribution to SWOD from a particular user would make up to a large amount for sustainability for an organization when you look into it. So we are seeing more and more bite-sized packs which are being created. SWOD coming in specifically in sports, watch a specific match only by subscribing to it, and not just a overall subscription which is required for the channel for a period of time. So these kind of newer and newer models will make it more affordable. We think, okay, the affluent will be the ones who would buy it more. Maybe the other way around, the auto rickshaw wala at the end of the road would consume more content and would not mind paying 50 rupees for that content than maybe a person who can afford it. But because he may not have a time to look into it, he will not spend on it. So.
But currently, Prashant, I would say, in terms of how the economics work, the cost of reaching the auto rickshaw wala to collect that 50 rupees from him is way more difficult. While
Yes.
all the platforms are experimenting, which is amazing, but I don't think we're yet tapping that base. We're still tapping the higher end of the society because finally, in the long run, they are the ones who are going to pay.
Right.
At least in the short to medium term. And
do you see operator billing? There is some talk about operator billing coming in soon. It's been experimentally run through multiple places. There have been alliances which are done in other places. Do you see this as one of the solution which may come through, wherein telcos become the middleman in terms of collection and then giving it?
Again, over there, could definitely, they're sitting on a large base and they know a lot, and they have a active wallet with a large base. So definitely, only thing again I would say here is a rev share or the arrangements that you would strike with the telcos in terms of what they keep. Secondly, I would say also from a consumer's point of view, I feel eventually we may see some amount of aggregation of apps, and because for today the consumer, in an aggregate, if he wants to have 70-80% of the content, the amount he has to shell out on a monthly or annual basis is a lot, and much more than what he pays for his cable subscription, which gives him 400-500 channels. So I would say in the medium term, there will be aggregation models or distributors who would help give reach and scale to the SWOT business. This is probably what I can say.
Right. So another thing, Karthik, maybe for you is there is some talk which always keeps coming in and out, and now it's taken in some part of a bill itself. Is regulation of content a good or bad thing? Maybe some lights on it. Obviously, there may be some merits, some demerits. You can talk about that.
So I think I don't know. It depends on. It's a very contextual question, right? In a free market, I think if you need a thumb rule, as little regulation is best. But at the same time, especially in a market like India, where there are very different kind of audience cohorts, I think some amount of regulation is required. So very difficult to answer this as a point of view question, because it's very subjective.
Oh, got it. So there is an interesting question which has come up from one of the audience here. Simran is asking, what do you think is going to be the business response of OTT platform to the news ecosystem? Do you see OTT transforming broadcast news market in the future, and how? Does anyone want to take that?
Let me share some insights. We power up Republic's digital destination, right? And the numbers, for good or bad reasons, over the last few months on the OTT platform of Republic have been insane. It's a pleasant surprise. I mean, they have a pretty good app. They also have a PWA, or a progressive web app, right? So with a PWA, they don't require the user to download the app. So without having the user download the app, you're getting access to the user's real estate on their phone. The biggest challenge today, one of the biggest challenges today with any OTT platform is user acquisition, right? So one of the things that we learned from surprisingly a news organization is how they have used technology effectively to tap into the real estate of the phone very quickly. And as a result, news coverage on Republic is being watched by millions of people who might not have enough space on their phone to download an app, right? So it's a very nifty use of tech. But I think to answer your question about the news platforms, Brightcove powers up a lot of news companies globally. Fox in the US and Fox in Australia. In India, we power up Malayalam Manorama in the south and Republic on the news side. And we see that the numbers, especially during the time when certain anchors are going live, that can compare to any sporting event, right? So it's already there. To answer your question in terms of whether this is coming up, it's already happening. And
Right.
live and news takes to live very closely, right? Because it's all about breaking news.
Right.
India is all about breaking news. You want to break news fast on TV, online, on social media, what have you, very quickly. And technology is the enabler that makes that happen.
In fact, I heard about this same point from one other news company. What they were telling is, see, as a user, your telephone has got only one mobile app which can be downloaded, which is meant for news. And there is a lot of competition for that. So hence, and then there's a lot of money to be spent in to get the download. And then the download will not guarantee you stickiness. The user may download but not really use it on an ongoing basis. So what you mentioned in terms of PWA can be a very brilliant technology answer to something like that. It may save millions of dollars in terms of marketing money for getting that initial download for a lot of companies per se.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So moving on to another question with regard to staying with the monetization as a part. How much advertisement is too much advertisement? That's another part of the thing. One part is subscription, the other part is advertisement, right? So how much advertisement is too much advertisement according to you?
I think I should be the absolute last guy to answer that question.
For
Kranti,
the
you want to take
last
it?
2 months, every time I have watched a YouTube video, they have shown 2 ads.
Yeah.
Before the video. So
One which can be skipped, one which can't be skipped. Right. So there is another question from one of the audience here. Praveen is asking, he's basically looked at what's happening right now with the cinema theaters, where people are not really going into the cinemas and it's taken ahead. And there is digital box offices which are coming up, wherein the release is happening on the OTT per se. So he wants to go and see, is there a somewhere in between 10 to 15 seater kind of a theater experience, wherein one would go and watch a OTT based movie of his choice along with his friends who is okay to watch with it, and then without any fear of COVID or otherwise. Is this a new business model which is emerging? Rent a theater.
I have a. Sorry, Kranti, go ahead.
No. Karthik.
I was going to do a wisecrack. I was going to say I have a wonderful 15-person theater available. It's called my living room, which is where I watch most of my OTT releases. I actually, on these lines, Prashanth, if you allow, I have a question for Saugata and Kranti. But Kranti, you were saying something.
No, I was just saying that we experimented with this. So we launched something called the Shemaroo box office, and we premiered a lot of films which were actually on the TVOD model. So we actually helped people and we gave them help producers release movies, giving them a robust marketing and awareness plan around their movie and a great ticketing partner. So we had Book My Show as our ticketing partner on Shemaroo to sell the tickets. I would say, but still nothing can beat the movie going experience, and therefore TVOD, and again the whole customer acquisition issue of getting a TVOD transaction is still a challenge in India. So probably a SVOD approach, the way a lot of the other digital players have gone, is probably a better approach. The only issue remaining is that the producer does not become a partner or a co-beneficiary of the release. So, he gets a fixed sum, and, if the film does really well or it flops, he gets the fixed sum. But we were trying to give the producer a chance to, because that's the only window where he can really either make a fortune or it will be a flop. That's the bet that every filmmaker takes. Otherwise, all the other monetization is fairly estimatable on the table before the film gets released. So, but I feel that even TVOD, though we've experimented, and Book My Show was a great partner, and they had a great database to tap into consumers who were transacting on films. I would still say that we are, as an economy, not yet there on TVOD, and so yeah, that was going to be my, at least whatever learning I've understood on digital TVOD or releases. So Karthik, we can go back to your question.
That's a great answer. I actually wanted to, on the same subject. I think the weekend collections, in a way, were becoming some sort of a currency to evaluate what is happening, with new releases. Right? I think with that going off, weekend collection, 100 crore clubs, all of those currencies sort of, I don't know if we'll ever get to that anymore from a box office perspective. Recently, I saw, Netflix put out a couple of news articles where they spoke about the first weekend number of watchers for a show, etc. Right. So, in a way, is there a new currency that is developing, especially when it comes to films being released on OTT? And if yes, what do you think? What kind of shape will it take in India?
Well, I'm a firm believer that some films will have to be released in theaters, but I'm going to be I'm a little pessimistic here, and I feel that there is a behavioral change which has come over the last 8-9 months. People are worried about getting into theaters. That will percolate into the ecosystem as well. I feel that, when we're looking at these big ticket films, big films with big budgets, monetizing those big films with big budgets on SVOD is very, very difficult. You can have the biggest, largest base, but monetizing it it's a tall task. We are very clear at Sony that we don't want to do these big ticket films on our platform. We are very happy to premiere films which are small, which will probably appeal to a certain cohort, right? And we will push them as much as we can and make that cohort very happy. But the moment you're buying a film for 100 crores, it puts a huge the P&L goes for a toss. So I feel that sort of, I don't know whether it is a very wise thing to do it, but I'm sure there are different business models. But we feel that the spectacle movies will have to find the theatricals. The spectacle movies will not be able to monetize themselves on SVOD, or because TVOD in this country doesn't exist, frankly. There are people have been trying it, they're still trying it, but I think it's a problem of the wallet. It's a problem of the psyche. I think we still aren't used to the fact that we're going to watch big film on a small screen. And also the fact is that we are, unlike the West, the OTT penetration is again very skewed towards the smartphone, right? We're watching our things on small 10-inch or 5-inch phones, right? So that doesn't work. But I feel that intrinsically the way the business works over the next 6-10 months will change, because there has to be a different kind of a revenue model, both from the partners on the other side, from the producers, from the major actors, from the platforms as well, for us to be able to make those films and also make money for everybody, right? But the good thing is that today, as I see that, with the SVOD model, there is a lot of scope for the so-called small films, the small films who would really, really find it difficult to find that Friday theater is finally finding its audience. I launched a couple of films over the last couple of months, small films, but they did very, very well. We did a film called Kadak, and we did a film called Bhosle, with Manoj Bajpayee and Rajat Kapoor, the likes, really great actors. But even if I say so, these films wouldn't have found the audience on a Friday because they wouldn't find those screens. They would be relegated to a 25 screen release. But today they are on the same platform. A Bhosle gets released alongside a Lakshmi Bomb or a Lakshmi, right? So, and that is very democratic, I feel. And I think if it is possible, uh, uh, we firmly believe if we can contain the cost, if we can make those films in a certain cost, we will be able to take it to the audience and monetize it. But if it goes beyond a certain number, it's very difficult. I still believe that it's not easy to sort of monetize it that easily.
Right. So moving to another aspect, what also comes across is India is country within multiple countries. If you look into it, it's multiple countries as we look into it. So the choice of people are different. The linguistic barriers exist. So is there a technology solution to this in the sense, uh, shoot ones provided in multiple language, or maybe there are multiple things which are happening, the tricks which keeps coming out of the shelves. Vinit, you want to add a little bit of how can technology help solve this linguistic problem per se?
No, absolutely. I mean, the multilingual nature of the country was a challenge, and now it's clearly a massive opportunity as we look at more eyeballs. But in terms of tech solving this, we are already at multilingual metadata, right? So there's metadata available in all major Indian languages. There's multiple audio tracks, right? So you can have one piece of content dubbed in all regional languages. So suddenly your reach is expanded by 8x or 9x. Plus, I think there's an acceptance also by the audience. I think, off topic, but there's an acceptance. We see this with our customers. The people are accepting to watch dubbed content now, right? So suddenly the multilingual nature of India becomes a strength. So multilingual metadata, multiple audio tracks for dubbed content, subtitling tech, auto transcripting of the content from speech to text, which makes it faster. So I think in terms of speed, we are already there. In terms of efficiency, we are already there. I think we are seeing increasingly that as OTT content owners look at broader audiences, this is becoming a very critical factor. People are looking at architecting their apps in regional languages now. Besides just English, they want the option available to the audience to select the language of choice when they log in. So I think it's a matter of time before you see this even with the big guys, the bigger OTT guys.
Right, right. So I see this one of the very what do you say, tricks up the sleeve, which draws in new customers. I had a couple of days back my mother coming in and saying that, you know what, why don't you download this specific app for me? I said, what are you going to do with this? Anyway, you watch this serial on TV. He said, no, I heard that on this app, the release happens one day before. So I'm going to watch it on the app. So my 65-year-old mother is adapting to technology to watch that one day early in her native language per se. So these are some of the tricks which are obviously coming in and drawing in more and more customers to the site.
Prashant, what I would say is that there are two parts to multilingual. One is, of course, a mass player trying to offer the same content in multiple languages. But to truly penetrate a particular language, you'll also have to be, giving content which is culturally contextual to that, geography or that language. And one is that you give, a certain urban, or I would call it the metro or urban audience, which switches or is accepting a lot of different content, who's also very culturally exposed, content which is of other language. I mean, watching a Spanish show, or even I've just watched a Tamil movie. I think if you want to go mass, and again, as Shemaroo said, a mass player, you really have to be present in the ecosystem, invest in the ecosystem, and again, there are opportunities in all the language ecosystems to disrupt and to offer good, relevant content, the kind that Saugata was saying, where there are good stories, good actors, good content, but culturally contextual to that region. And that I feel draws a lot of loyalty and affinity. And we've seen examples, both Shemaroo has seen an example where Gujarati, we see the dominance of Gujarati in terms of usage. Or I think there have been other regional apps, who've shown the way, whether it's Hoichoi or AHA, shown the way that a regional, app can also have a lot of opportunity. And we're also seeing, in fact, investments in other regional apps happening recently. So I would definitely say that regional and is something that's going to, really explode in the next maybe whatever few quarters or years it could be. And like what I said, if there is, if the kind of penetration that we're now going to, you will have to be able to cater to that audience in their language and cultural context.
Right, right. So another thing to think of, listening to all this things what we spoke of till now, are Indian companies ready to look for markets beyond India? Do you see the next Netflix coming from an Indian company, which is catering to the global audiences?
Let's talk about that.
Well, I don't, after a point, I think it's about the shows, I mean, the brands are made on the shows, right? What you have, Netflix was an aggregator. They were not making shows, right? They were distributors, right? Frankly. And it took 2 shows for them to become content makers. Orange is the New Black and I forget. Yes, House of Cards. So these are the 2 shows which took them, not that these are the best shows, that these are not their most monetized shows. These are the shows which took them across the American borders. I feel what we are seeing today is just the start of a bit of a content revolution in this country. And I was so happy to hear that yesterday Delhi Crime won the best show in the international Emmys. It comes on a different platform. Doesn't matter. I think it's a great win for India that the world is watching a show which has been premiered in an Indian platform, which was shot in India, which had Indian actors, which was an intrinsically Indian story. It has reached out, right? And I'm assuming, and as I see more and more, for example, like I said, my show, the show that we launched, Scam, it's been watched all over the world. I think it's getting watched more in the US and the other territories that we are in, more and more. So I feel that at the end of the day, if we get our act together as platforms, as brands, and if we manage to produce those pieces of content, the content travels. It doesn't know boundaries, frankly. The means of will a brand become as big as something else? Maybe yes. I mean, in today's time, a brand doesn't stay as relevant for more than 10 years. I mean, we know of so many brands which were, doing path-breaking work a few years back, but they've been relegated to somewhere else. So who knows? Who knows tomorrow an Indian brand will come up and probably that will be also not just the content, thanks to our technology. If we can probably get some real disruption in technology, we should be up there. And I see no reason that not happening. But I think the content needs to travel first. I think we need to sort of get the local right. The local will take it to the global. We're still finding our, sort of space in the local here.
Right.
To add to that, Prashanth, one thing that we are seeing on the regional OTT side is anyone who's looking at launching a new OTT platform is thinking global. I think that's a welcome change that we are experiencing in the last 6 to 7 months. Maybe it's COVID. Maybe they're realizing that, people are all stay at home, work from home globally. It's not only an India phenomenon, right? So there's a captive audience to attack, whether it's Indian or global. And so people are looking at distribution first. They're looking at content, obviously, but second is distribution and beyond borders.
Right. So I see that we are on the top of the hour. Last comments in terms of what do you all think is the next big thing in this area? Maybe a word each from each of you, and then we can wind the session at that. You want to go first, Karthik?
Sure, I can. Yeah, I think one observation is a lot of the things that we spoke about, right, is actually not futuristic. Right? Sometime back, Vinit was speaking about news, right? News is a here and now thing. Vinit spoke about Republic. In regional languages, news consumption is even higher, right, on OTT platforms, right? And we spoke about shows traveling across borders. For example, a show like Fauda, which is traveled across every nook and corner in the world. A lot of content from Korea which travels. It's again a here and now thing. Right? I think one thing that I foresee as happening, probably in a fairly big way, and I'd love for Saugata and Kranti to agree or disagree with this, is the content available in multiple languages within India. And we spoke about how it is true, but see, a lot of the stories, for example, there's a film that was released on Amazon in Tamil, which is actually Captain Gopinath's biography, which is not even a story from this state. Right? I think this should be available in Marathi. This should be available in Hindi. I don't think we are there right now. For example, Scam 1992 is a national piece. Presently, it's available in Hindi. So I feel that is going to probably change the dynamics of what's happening in India in a fairly big way. So I would bet on that first.
Okay. Vinit, last comments from you.
Yeah, I think the big opportunity that we see in the market, and if say looking at next year or the year after that, is create loyalty. I think it's difficult today. There is no loyalty to a single platform. There's loyalty to content. But I think as platforms expand and look at the next big thing, they will look at creating unique experiences which will attract and retain customers. The big challenge that we see in the market today across platforms, and the panel might most likely will agree that churn is a problem, right? So how do you create experiences in addition to content to hook audiences on? And maybe it's content to commerce, maybe it's partnering up with the e-commerce company, maybe it's to create loyalty where you reward people to watch content. But I think those sort of things will come up more and more as we look at experiences and content together.
Right. Saugata?
So I think, one, from a content perspective, I feel that we're scratching at the surface and we are sitting on a treasure trove. We've had a great tradition of oral literature, written literature across this country. We are, we have a bountiful of languages. We have not tapped into them. We need to go back, look at our myths, look at our legends, look at our folklores, look at our, all the literature that is there and make our own Indian content. The more we try and look to the West, it will be catch-up game. We will never be able to catch up. But the more we look at the stuff that we have here, the chances are of us making the next Fauda or being the next big platform becomes much higher.
Thank you. Kranti?
Yeah, so I feel it's absolutely, as Karthik said, here and now, but I do feel that the next year and a half to 2 years, we'll see a lot of the bigger OTT players focusing more on SVOD than anything else.
Yeah. So we'll wind up the session at this particular instant by looking at all that we discussed upon. Maybe looking at a future wherein there'll be a magical formula with AI saying that I want X number of viewerships. So it says, take this actor, take this director, make a movie of this much minutes, you will get this many viewerships. And then you will automatically have people coming in and watching those as a futuristic thing, that apart. So we are seeing multiple things happening in the industry in terms of ecosystem, presenting. Ultimately, the winner of all of this is the consumer who's getting to view richer and richer content in a format which is more suitable to him at the convenience of his home and the time that is suitable to himself. So let's all watch and see and be a part of this magical journey as this industry transforms. It was great talking to all of you. I hope our audience also enjoyed hearing on this discussion. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Prashanth,
everyone.
and thanks,
Thank you,
Thanks,
everybody.
everyone.
Thank